If your heartbeat echoes the drums of war, you're ready for What If War. Unveil the battlefield with us. Explore the chilling what-ifs of warfare in every corner of history. Am I the only one that didn't know how close we are to a potential conflict? Today, we're delving into a hypothetical scenario that carries significant weight, a potential conflict between China and Taiwan. Now, before we proceed, remember, this is an exploration of possibilities, not a prediction of the future. Picture this. The year is 2024. Tensions between mainland China and Taiwan have been escalating for decades, and the situation has reached a critical point. China is prepared to assert its power, and Taiwan is readying itself for the impending threat. It's a scenario that has the entire world on high alert, and for good reason. We're discussing two economic powerhouses, separated by a narrow strait, each with their own claims and ambitions. To understand this potential conflict, we must look beyond the headlines and examine the intricacies of military strength, strategic alliances, and the complex dynamics of international relations. First things first, let's talk numbers, because in a standoff, size does matter. China, with its massive population and booming economy, boasts one of the largest militaries in the world. We're talking millions of active personnel, a whole mess of tanks, ships, and aircraft. It's like comparing a grizzly bear to a bobcat, at least on paper. Now Taiwan, bless their hearts, they ain't no slouches neither. They've been preparing for this possibility for decades, investing heavily in a modern, technologically advanced military. But even their best efforts might not be enough to match the sheer volume of firepower that China can bring to bear. Think of it like this. China's military is like a mighty river, vast and relentless. Taiwan's, on the other hand, is more like a well-trained, agile panther, relying on speed, strategy, and the element of surprise. It's a classic David and Goliath situation, with the odds stacked heavily against the underdog. But hold your horses, folks, because this ain't just a two-player game. Just like in any good old-fashioned hoedown, there are other dancers on the floor. The United States, Japan, Australia, and a whole host of other countries have a vested interest in keeping the peace in the region. They may not be directly involved, but their support, both military and diplomatic, could be the wild card in this whole shebang. On the flip side, China's got some powerful friends too, countries that might be willing to lend a hand if things get really ugly. It's a tangled web of alliances, folks, and trying to predict who's gonna side with who is about as easy as herding cats in a hurricane. So, there you have it, folks. All right, folks, let's break down this clash of titans, starting with the folks doing the clashing, the soldiers themselves. Now, China, they've got manpower coming out the wazoo. According to Global Firepower, they've got over 2 million active personnel, with another 2 million in reserve. That's enough, folks, to fill up the entire state of Texas and then some. Taiwan, on the other hand, they're working with a leaner, meaner force. They've got around 180,000 active duty soldiers and a reserve force of about 1.5 million. Now that may sound like a lot of folks, but compared to China, it's like bringing a fly swatter to a gunfight. But y'all know what they say, quantity ain't always quality. While China might have the numbers, Taiwan's military is known for its training and professionalism. They've been living under the shadow of a potential Chinese invasion for decades, so they ain't exactly caught off guard. Let's talk boots on the ground, the infantry, the grunts, the folks slogging it out in the trenches. China, with its massive population, has a seemingly endless supply of warm bodies they can throw at a conflict. They could literally swamp Taiwan with sheer numbers, overwhelm their defenses just by sheer force of people. Taiwan, however, they gotta be smarter about it. They can't win a war of attrition, so they've gotta rely on strategy, mobility, and hit-and-run tactics. Think of it like this. China's the heavyweight boxer trying to land a knockout punch. Taiwan's the agile welterweight, dancing around, jabbing, and looking for an opening. Now, in a straight-up brawl on open ground, China's got the advantage. But Taiwan's counting on fighting a defensive war, using their knowledge of the terrain, their fortified positions, and their technological edge to even the odds. And speaking of technology, that's where things get real interesting. While China's been playing catch-up in the military tech game, They've made some serious strides in recent years. They're pumping money into developing advanced weapon systems, drones, cyber warfare capabilities, the whole 9 yards. Taiwan, though, they've been ahead of the curve for a while now. They've got a more technologically sophisticated military, with a focus on precision strikes and asymmetric warfare. They're investing heavily in things like anti-ship missiles, which could be a real thorn in the side of China's navy. Think of it like this. China's like a blacksmith, forging a mighty sword. It's big, it's powerful, but it might be a little slow. Taiwan, they're more like a watchmaker, crafting a delicate, intricate clockwork mechanism. It might not be as flashy, but it's precise and deadly. But y'all, let's not forget the human element. Wars ain't just fought with tanks and missiles, they're fought with hearts, minds, and a whole lot of grit. The will to fight, the determination to defend your homeland, that can be a powerful weapon in itself. Taiwan, they've got that in spades. They know what's at stake, and they're prepared to fight tooth and nail to protect their freedom and their way of life. China, on the other hand, well, that's a bit of a wild card. Their soldiers might be well-equipped and well-trained, but do they have the same level of motivation? That's a question only time will tell. So, there you have it, folks. All right, folks, let's talk toys. And I ain't talking about the kind you find under a Christmas tree. When it comes to raw military hardware, China's got a whole toy store at their disposal. We're talking tanks by the thousands, artillery pieces that could make a grown man weep, and enough armored vehicles to stretch from here to yonder. Taiwan, they're working with a more modest budget, but they've been smart about their shopping. They've invested in quality over quantity, focusing on weapon systems that are specifically designed to counter China's strengths. Think of it like this. China's got a whole arsenal of shotguns blasting away with overwhelming firepower. Taiwan, they're more like a sniper, waiting patiently for the perfect shot. Now, in a head-to-head slugfest, China's got the clear advantage. But Taiwan's banking on their ability to exploit weaknesses, to use their agility and precision to chip away at the giant. It's like a swarm of bees against a bear. The bear might be bigger, but those stings can sure add up. Now, let's take to the skies where things get real interesting. China's been beefing up its air force like a bodybuilder on steroids, pumping out advanced fighter jets, bombers, and even stealth aircraft. They're aiming for air superiority, the ability to control the skies and dictate the terms of engagement. Taiwan, they ain't sitting idly by, mind you. They've got a respectable air force of their own, with a mix of modern fighters and older but still capable aircraft. They've also invested heavily in air defense systems, trying to create a no-fly zone over their island. Think of it like this. China's air force is like a hawk, powerful and majestic, circling overhead looking for prey. Taiwan's, they're more like a falcon, swift and agile, able to dart in and out, delivering a quick strike before disappearing back into the clouds. And then there's the high seas, where the real dance of dragons takes place. China's been building up its navy faster than a shrimp boat captain at a seafood buffet. They've got aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, you name it, they're building it. They're projecting power, folks, and making sure everybody knows who's boss in the neighborhood. Taiwan's navy, well, it's a bit more modest, like a base boat compared to a yacht. They ain't gonna win any beauty contests, but they've got a few tricks up their sleeve. They're focusing on coastal defense, using fast attack craft, mines, and anti-ship missiles to keep the Chinese Navy at bay. Think of it like this. China's Navy is like a great white shark, sleek, powerful, and looking for a meal. Taiwan's, they're more like a school of piranhas, small but deadly, capable of inflicting serious damage if you underestimate them. Section 4, the tech battlefield. But y'all, in the 21st century, warfare ain't just about guns and bombs. It's about cyber warfare, electronic warfare, and all sorts of high-tech gadgetry that would make even a science fiction writer scratch their head. China's been pouring money into these areas, developing sophisticated hacking capabilities, satellite-killing weapons, and even hypersonic missiles. They're trying to blind, deafen, and confuse their enemies before the first shot is even fired. Taiwan, they're no slouches in the tech department either. They've got their own cyber warfare units, their own electronic warfare defenses, and they're investing heavily in artificial intelligence and drone technology. Think of it like this. China's waging a digital blitzkrieg, trying to overwhelm their enemies with a barrage of ones and zeros. Taiwan, they're building a digital iron dome, trying to intercept those attacks and protect their critical infrastructure. It's a whole new kind of battlefield, folks, and the winner might not be the one with the most tanks, but the one with the smartest algorithms. Section 1. The Stars and Stripes. Now let's mosey on over to the elephant in the room, the one wearing the stars and stripes, the United States of America. See, they've had Taiwan's back for decades, selling them weapons, providing military training, and generally making it clear that they ain't too keen on seeing the island nation swallowed up by the mainland. Now, whether Uncle Sam would actually go toe-to-toe with China over Taiwan is a whole other can of worms. It'd be a heck of a gamble, a real high-stakes poker game with global consequences. But one thing's for sure, the U.S. Navy ain't sailing those fancy aircraft carriers around the Pacific just for the fresh sea air. They're sending a message, loud and clear. Don't mess with our friends, y'all, or you'll have us to answer to. Now, whether that message is enough to deter China is a question that's got diplomats and generals losing sleep. Section 2, Allies in the East. But the U.S. ain't the only one with skin in this game. Japan, Australia, and a whole passel of other countries in the region are watching this situation like a hawk watching a chicken coop. They know that if things go south in the Taiwan Strait, it ain't just gonna be a local squabble. It'd be like a sonic boom, sending shockwaves across the entire Asia-Pacific region, disrupting trade, sparking fear, and potentially dragging everyone into a conflict they don't want. So they're doing their best to keep the peace, talking to both sides, urging restraint, and praying that cooler heads prevail. Think of it like this. The U.S. might be the sheriff in these parts, but they ain't the only ones with a badge and a gun. There's a whole posse of concerned citizens ready to stand up for what they believe in, even if it means staring down a dragon. Now, let's not forget that China ain't exactly a lone wolf in this rodeo. They've got some powerful friends of their own, countries like Russia, North Korea, and a few others who might be willing to lend a hand if things get really hairy. Now, these alliances ain't exactly built on love and trust. It's more like a marriage of convenience, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of deal, but in a pinch, a friend's a friend, even if they're a bit rough around the edges. So, while the US and its allies might have the edge in terms of raw military power, China's got a few cards up its sleeve too. It's a high-stakes game of diplomatic chess, folks. And trying to predict the winner is about as easy as guessing how many beans are in a jar at a county fair. But here's the thing, y'all, this ain't just a regional conflict we're talking about. It's a global showdown, a clash of titans that could shake the very foundations of the international order. See, the whole world's got a stake in what happens between China and Taiwan. A war would disrupt global trade, send shockwaves through financial markets, and potentially plunge the world into a new Cold War, one with even higher stakes and even scarier consequences. So, folks all over the globe are watching, waiting, and hoping that this whole thing blows over like a summer thunderstorm. Because in the end, nobody wins in a war, folks. Everybody loses, some more than others, but nobody comes out on top. So let's hope that the diplomats, the peacemakers, the folks with a lick of sense can find a way to cool things down before this powder keg explodes. Well, folks, we've moseyed through the hypotheticals, sized up the armies, and pondered the alliances, and let me tell you, it ain't a pretty picture. A war between China and Taiwan wouldn't be some backwoods brawl. It'd be a full-blown Category 5 hurricane, tearing through the global economy and leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. Just imagine, folks, supply chains disrupted, factories idled, stock markets plunging faster than a catfish on a hook. The world depends on both these players, and a conflict would send shockwaves from Beijing to Birmingham, leaving nobody unscathed. And that's before we even talk about the human cost, the lives lost, the families torn apart, the scars that linger long after the guns fall silent. War ain't a board game, folks. It's the real deal, and the consequences are about as welcome as a skunk at a picnic. Now, even if the bullets and bombs were contained to the Taiwan Strait, the fallout would spread further than a spilled jug of sweet tea at a family reunion. We're talking a potential reshuffling of the global order, with the United States and its allies squared off against China and its partners in a new Cold War. Alliances would be tested, old grudges would resurface, and the world would be cleaved into two wary camps. each looking over their shoulder and wondering when the next shoe was going to drop. And y'all know what they say about divided houses? They ain't exactly known for their stability. The world ain't big enough for two superpowers to duke it out, folks. We gotta find a way to share this here planet, even if it means swallowing our pride and learning to compromise. In a scenario where Taiwan loses the war, the geopolitical landscape would shift dramatically. The loss would not only impact Taiwan's sovereignty, but also send ripples across the global stage, affecting international relations and economic stability. The aftermath would see a significant realignment of alliances and power structures, with long-lasting consequences for the region and beyond. Economically speaking, the repercussions would be felt far and wide. Trade routes that have been the lifeblood of the global economy could be disrupted, leading to shortages and price hikes. The tech industry, heavily reliant on Taiwan's semiconductor production, would face unprecedented challenges. Companies and countries worldwide would scramble to adapt to the new reality, potentially sparking a global economic downturn. Politically, the loss would embolden some nations while disheartening others. Allies of Taiwan, like the United States and Japan, would have to reassess their strategies and commitments in the region. The defeat could serve as a cautionary tale, prompting nations to bolster their defenses or seek new alliances to safeguard their interests. On the flip side, it could also lead to a more aggressive stance from powers that see an opportunity to expand their influence. Socially, the impact would be profound and deeply personal. Families would be torn apart, communities would be displaced, and the very fabric of Taiwanese society would be changed forever. The resilience and spirit of the Taiwanese people would be tested in ways unimaginable as they navigate a new chapter in their history. The loss of Taiwan in such a conflict would, without a doubt, be a pivotal moment in modern history, reshaping the world in ways that are difficult to predict. It serves as a stark reminder of the high stakes involved and the urgent need for diplomatic solutions to avoid such a catastrophic outcome. So what's the alternative, y'all might ask? Well, it ain't exactly rocket science, but it does require a heaping dose of patience, diplomacy, and good old-fashioned common sense. Instead of rattling sabers and flexing military muscle, China and Taiwan, along with their international partners, need to sit down at the table and talk. Now, I ain't talking about some photo-op handshake and a bunch of empty promises. I'm talking about real, honest-to-goodness dialogue, where both sides come to the table ready to listen, to compromise, and to find a solution that respects everyone's interests. It might be a long and winding road, folks, with plenty of bumps and detours along the way. But it's the only path that leads to a peaceful and prosperous future for everyone involved. Ladies and gentlemen, I may be a humble storyteller, but it is clear that war brings nothing but destruction. It represents a collapse of diplomacy, a collapse of leadership, and a collapse of humanity. Therefore, we must face the reality that those in positions of power, those who make decisions impacting millions of lives, may choose the path of war, conflict, and division. Let us acknowledge that, at the end of the day, we are all human beings, struggling to survive, protect our loved ones, and witnessing the world crumble around us. That concludes our grim discussion for today. Stay vigilant and remember, the seeds of conflict are sown within each one of us. On that note, I leave you with a stark reminder from a man who understood the depths of human conflict. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Wise words, but in these times, they seem distant.